Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of your favorite podcast, The Fantasy Birds. Back with guest co-host, Mr. Tom Hickson. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. We're gonna try something interesting. So, like I said, we're expanding the brand, baby, diversifying that portfolio.
Exactly. So today we're going to be trying some player rankings in the NBA. Fantasy basketball player rankings, points league. Let's get right into it. Our top 50. Let's start off at the top. We got Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Name too long, got to abbreviate that nonsense. James Harden and Kevin Durant. Give me some fiery takes on this top five if you got any.
I really want to put Luka Doncic number one just because of how insane he's been. I know the last 7 or 8 games or so, he's gotten at least 50 points in every single game. His averages have been far exceeding a triple double. And after 2 games ago, they got a loss, and he said, quote unquote, I was being selfish. And so I was thinking, all right, well that might mean he takes a little bit more of a backseat role to see if they can figure out different ways for the Mavericks to win games. Wrong. He comes out next game and drops 88 fantasy points. That is a week winner type performance just from one game right there. That can swing the balance of an entire matchup for a week. So yeah, look, Luka Doncic is crazy, but yeah, it's hard to go against Jokic when he's actually averaging a triple double, and he's been just clearly the best player in fantasy so far. So other than that, I have no qualms with the rest of this. Giannis has also been solid, but Luka and Jokic are both on a different level right now.
Yeah, as compared to our preseason rankings player, Jokic taking a pretty big step forward. You don't really expect him to average the triple-double. You expect him to flirt with it on a nightly basis, but to go out and average it, absolutely crazy in a fantasy points league and in a roto league regardless. But the name interesting to me here is James Harden. Is he going to continue this production when Kyrie Irving comes back? How many mouths are going to be able to get fed in that Brooklyn offense? You got to imagine Kevin Durant's going to do his thing regardless who's there. But James Harden, someone to keep your eye on with Kyrie Irving coming back to the starting lineup in Brooklyn, if you ask me.
I would think Kyrie Irving would be the odd man out, but that's just me. If you had to pick one of those 3, I feel like it would make the most sense for Kyrie with his unexplained absences. I think Kyrie would be the most likely man out. So seeing Harden in the top 5, he got 71 in his first game in Brooklyn. So I don't hate Harden in the top 5 for this one.
Right. So let's move on to round out our top 10. It's going to be Sabonis, James, Bradley Beal, Karl-Anthony Towns, Nikola Vucevic, Steph Curry, and Joel Embiid. What sticks out here to you?
Sabonis being a bona fide top 10 fantasy basketball player that could have been gotten in the 3rd and 4th rounds. It's kind of crazy to think about that when you see how he's been playing. I mean, he's just been a bona fide stud. And even if he starts off a game slow, I played against Sabonis last week, and there was twice where he had less than 20 points at the half, and dude ends up with like 55. It's ridiculous. Sabonis is just a bona fide producer. LeBron James is weird because he's been quote unquote day to day for literally the entire season so far and has yet to miss a single game. His production has dipped a little bit, had a really bad game last night, only scoring 26 points. That's not really going to get it done from a first round pick. But Vucevic is also a really good steal here in terms of value. Bradley Beal has also been really good. I want to see how Karl-Anthony Towns comes back. Obviously, he had the injury, and literally after one game back, he came down with COVID, and shout out to him. I hope with everything that's gone on, I know the COVID bug has really kind of devastated his family. So, shout out to Karl-Anthony Towns. Hopes he comes back healthy, and we'll see how he does when he comes back and see if he has any side effects from this.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Karl-Anthony Towns. Guy at number 9 in these rankings, you got to imagine he'd be a top 5 player if he hadn't gone through all these injuries and now COVID. So how much more time is he going to miss? But that's going to factor in his lower ranking right here. But all these guys you kind of expected to be here, except for Sabonis and Vucevic. maybe third, fourth round picks coming into the year, but absolutely dominating for their team, especially Vucevic with all the injuries that the Magic are going through. Markelle Fultz, Jonathan Isaac, and really just leaning on him to score, assist, do everything for that team. So Vucevic standing out here, but all these other guys, I mean, we kind of expected them to be here, and no surprise that they're here rounding out our top 10. Let's go into our next. We're going to fill out all the way to number 20. We got Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, Andre Drummond, Julius Randle, Kawhi Leonard, Trae Young, Russell Westbrook, and Mr. Third Wheel, Kyrie Irving at number 20. What do you think about these guys?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes without saying, at least for me, that Kyrie Irving is the most volatile name on this list, and him being at 20, at least on this slide, kind of fitting. You don't really know what's going to happen with that. Obviously, there's only one ball. I feel bad for the ball and how many war wounds that ball is going to have in Brooklyn. Having been bounced 500 times in one possession for every time they're on offense. So we're going to see how that works out. Andre Drummond has been a really solid player so far, but I think Julius Randle, if you're looking at guys who started off the preseason rankings, I think Julius Randle would be the best value that would have, the best value on this list in terms of where they were preseason, where they were in the preseason rankings to where they are now. He's outperformed his ADP. He's averaging a double-double. He's averaging about 45 points per game, and it's kind of commonplace now for him to get almost 50 a night, just given expectations. I think he's the most interesting name on this list just because what Tibbs has done with the Knicks. Granted, they've struggled a little bit recently, but I think what they've been able to do with the Knicks has been incredible. And then Russell Westbrook is also really interesting. Obviously, he's averaging a triple-double, and he's extremely productive when he plays. But a new injury on top of him not playing back-to-backs in general, that's going to bump him down. And I think 19 is a fair place to put him, given that he's at the point where he's not going to play every night like he used to, and it's a shame, but at least that when he plays, he's still going to flirt with a triple double every night. He's going to give you at least 50, so he's still solid, and I still think he's definitely worth starting. He's one of the best fantasy players, but yep, got to knock him down if he's not going to play every night.
Yeah, when I'm looking at these rankings, I'm eyeing up the top three: Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, and Andre Drummond. Damian Lillard, not expected the way he's played so far. What preseason rankings would indicate, dropping his numbers a little bit early on. Starting to get it back, though. CJ McCollum out with a walking boot for who knows how long, probably a month or two. So Damian Lillard, look for him to shoot up in the coming months. I think he's going to be playing very well. Anthony Davis, probably the bust of the first round, if we're being totally honest. Top 5 pick, almost every league. Just not getting it done. It probably has something to do with the Lakers just beating up on every single team and not really needing Anthony Davis to do much. And adding a Montrezl Harrell, getting all those rebounds, points off the bench. So Anthony Davis, not really putting up the points you'd like to see for a top 5 pick. Still a very good fantasy player, but just not, upper echelon like you expected coming into the year. Andre Drummond's a guy I'm looking at because, look, he's going to average your 20, 15, whatever, basically every single night. But with Jared Allen stepping into a Cleveland Cavalier uniform, will that start to take away a little bit of Andre Drummond's numbers? And will Drummond get traded, and how that's going to affect his value? I feel like he's going to be fine even with the Jared Allen, but I do expect his numbers to tail off just a little bit, and especially if he gets traded to somewhere where he's not needed to play 30 minutes a game. So very interesting to keep your eye on Drummond. And then Trae Young, his numbers haven't been what you expected coming into the year. The last 2 weeks have been kind of brutal for Trae Young. I expect him to get that going, and he'll be just fine. But, yeah, like you talked about Westbrook, and he's going to do his thing. So let's move it on to number 21, Malcolm Brogdon, starting off this list with Jason Tatum, Christian Wood, DeMar DeRozan, Ja Morant, Spicy P, Brandon Ingram, and Jaylen Brown. Who sticks out here to you?
Well, Spicy P has been spicy, but when I look at this list, my favorite thing, like I said, this is kind of a theme. I like to look at guys who have really outperformed their ADP, guys who are steals, because it's relatively easy to get a first round, second round talent in the first and second round. Obviously, that's what you're supposed to do. But when you can get Malcolm Brogdon in the fifth or sixth round, that's a guy that can win you a league. And Malcolm Brogdon has been really good. Obviously, he's on a very good Under Armour All-Stars team, and this is one of the reasons why. Malcolm Brogdon was one of the guys that I thought would be able to take a step up in the preseason. But I thought he would just be, a solid starter. He'll get you 38 a night, something like that, something respectable. But like Malcolm Brogdon has been really solid. So I love to be proven right by Brogdon. Christian Wood, again, I think I've said this pretty often, but jump on the Christian Wood fantasy bandwagon, man. It's a great place to be. It's still wide open. It's still wide open. We're still accepting applicants to join the bandwagon. Christian Wood has started to emerge as a fantasy star. He'll pretty much get you 40 every night. I think John Morant for the future, when he comes back, could be very interesting as the guy most likely on this list to climb from where he is. I think 25 is fair, given he's only played 2 games, but the 2 games that he did play, in full at least, were absolute monster performances. One of which was a 66-point outburst in his second game. I think this is going to be a steal down the line. It's obviously hurt not having him, but I think he'll be good down the line. And then Jaylen Brown was actually a really good pick. This is a guy that was picked in the 4th or 5th round, and he's also a guy that's also exceeded his ADP. He's giving you solid production, 26, 4, and 6. That'll get it done, especially if you're looking for a third guy in your starting lineup, like a third alpha type scorer. If you're a really good team, Jaylen Brown has been really solid. So yeah, I think those 3 guys, Malcolm Brogdon, Christian Wood, and Jaylen Brown, are most. They have exceeded their ADP the most, and I think if you have one of those 3 guys, you love to see it. The only thing I'm concerned about here, Jason Tatum. The Celtics COVID situation has been rocky, to say the least. Games have been postponed. There's been a lot of that in the Eastern Conference, but the Celtics have been hit the hardest. Not to mention an injury for Tatum is going to keep him, or COVID for Tatum. It's going to keep him out about a week and a half. That's going to be a tough blow. And considering that he was a first-round pick, it kind of sucks to see him slide into 22. But when he gets healthy, we'll see if he can. We'll see if he can climb back up those rankings.
Yeah, Malcolm Brogdon probably jumping up the furthest up this list. Avoid Karis LeVert coming to the Indiana Pacers. You have to expect that he would have eaten into Malcolm Brogdon's workload and probably numbers and usage. Unfortunately, Karis LeVert not going to be able to play. Hope he's better, but Malcolm Brogdon looks to be a steady factor going forward in fantasy basketball. Guy I'm interested to see is DeMar DeRozan. Is he going to be able to keep up these numbers? 21, 7, and 6. Absolutely brilliant numbers for where he went, climbing up the ranks, but I'm not sure if he can keep it going. If he can, definitely going to be one of the surprises of the year, but I think he's playing above where he probably will end up at the end of the year, if I had to guess. And Brandon Ingram doing more than I expected this year with his Zion, but Lonzo Ball not really being a factor has helped Brandon Ingram exceed expectations. Not really a true point guard on that team, I feel like, in the half court, really just Brandon Ingram, Zion post up. So Ingram definitely doing more than I expected this season. And let's go in. We're going to ride through the 30s with Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Zach LaVine, Zion Williamson, the injured CJ McCollum, Jeremiah Grant, Chris Middleton, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 37. What are your thoughts here?
So when I look at this list right here between 29 and 37, 2 names here really stand out to me, given my theme and the way I've approached this. 2 names really stand out to me. One for a good reason and one for a not so good reason. I'm pretty sure you can figure out who it's going to be. I'll start with the good. Jeremy Grant has just been incredible. We criticized that pick when it was made initially. We thought that on a really good Under Armour All-Stars team that this might be weakness in his lineup. That's turned out to not be the case at all. 25, 6, and 2 has just been incredible numbers for Jerami Grant, who's taken so many steps in his actual game to the point where he can be a bona fide scorer. We've always known that he could give you production in multiple facets: rebounds, steals, and blocks. I mean, he's a really good defender. But the leap that he's taken in scoring has really boosted him up to a point where he's a bona fide fantasy starter right now in a points league, and he's been considering where he was drafted, he's been one of the best steals in the draft so far. The other name I really want to hit on real quick is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. This was a guy, he was picked with top of the second round, expectations, and seeing him at 37, it's not very good. Now, granted, he hasn't been terrible. 21, 6, and 5 is respectable numbers, and he has picked it up as of late a little bit more than he did in the beginning of the season. I've always been really high on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I had him last year. I very much loved having him on my team, but I definitely think that drafting him with the 15th overall pick, it's so rich for me, man. It's a little too high. It's kind of like what happened with Drew Holiday, and I'm sure we'll get to him as well. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, it's not what you want to see from a second round pick being 37th on this list. And you understand why. Zach LaVine kind of struggled a little bit out of the gate, but the past 2 weeks or so, he has been balling out. He's been really good, putting up numbers beyond scoring, which is what I wanted to see from him. So I'm very impressed by that, and I hope for LaVine's sake that he can keep it up, because I think with the team that he's currently on now in this league, I think Zach LaVine is a major piece to round up that guard rotation for Under Armour All-Stars. Zion Williamson, I think, is going to continue to be solid. Jimmy Butler started off really poorly, but I think he's bounced back a little bit. But Jimmy Butler has been better recently, so good for him. And then Chris Middleton started off really hot, averaged like 50 points per game through his first 3 or 4 games. Kind of dropped off a little bit, but that's kind of what we expected. This is a good range for him. I kind of like how this list is shaking out.
Yeah, the theme for this little snippet right here, it's got to be bust for me, and it starts with Ben Simmons at the top of the list, only averaging 12, 8, and 9. If you're going to be a first-round pick or a borderline second-round pick, you got to average more than 12 points a game. He's not really getting it done on the offensive end, whether that's a coaching decision with Doc Rivers or whatever's going on in Philadelphia. Ben Simmons not getting it done. Jimmy Butler also not performing to expectations, dealing with injuries and COVID nonsense, but I expect him to get it going, like you said. And then I'm looking at CJ McCollum in a walking boot, probably going to miss 2 months, maybe a little bit too high on this list right now. But for a guy averaging upwards of 27 points a game, if he's able to get back and healthy for the remainder of the fantasy basketball regular season and playoffs, you got to like where you're going if you got CJ McCollum, just if he's going to be healthy and how effective he's going to be after that injury. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right there with Ben Simmons, 2 first-round picks, borderline second-round picks, just not getting it done, not really performing up to expectations. He's got very good games at times, but then he relegate back to just average games where he's only putting up 20 points, not many assists or rebounds or other categories. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I expect him to have a much better end to the season than what's come so far, but just not getting it done to where he was drafted in the preseason ranks. All right, let's keep it moving. We got John Wall, Kristaps Porzingis coming back from injury, Fred VanVleet, playoff, pandemic, Paul George, Kyle Lowry, Rudy Gobert, Devin Booker, and De'Aaron Fox to round us out. What sticks out here to you?
I think this is the time of the list where obviously you have players that you're very comfortable starting that you wouldn't really consider sitting unless they have a super game disadvantage here. But with that being said, I think Devin Booker and De'Aaron Fox are the 2 names on this list that have the most breakout potential in terms of being able to improve their standing on this list. De'Aaron Fox has just been so inconsistent, man. Literally, his last 2 games, his last game was an 80 burger, which is one of the highest individual game scores we've seen this entire season. I think it's only been done 2 or 3 times. And yet the game before he got 13, but this isn't the first time we've seen this. We've seen games where he's obviously been injured and maybe on a minutes restriction, and because of that he'll have games with 10 or 12 or something like that. He's been really inconsistent lately, and I don't really know what to make out of him, but I do still believe that he has the potential to climb up this list. Same with Devin Booker. I think he's been better recently than he was to start the season, and I think that's gonna bear itself out. That's going to bear itself out as the season goes on. Kyle Lowry has been remarkably consistent. Man, having him on my team. It's very comfortable knowing that I'm going to get between 36 and 46 points from him every single night. Nothing incredible. That's why I think this is around the right area for Kyle Lowry. But he doesn't have those bad games like De'Aaron Fox does. I'm very pleased with just how consistent Kyle Lowry has been. Fred VanVleet, similar way. I think both of them have obviously shown that they have standalone value, whether one of them is on the court, whether both of them are on the court or not. And then the last thing I'll discuss here is just Porzingis. I think I've always been. I think this is a decent place for Porzingis, but I've always been hesitant to really count Porzingis as someone that can sway the balance of power when you're talking about the top teams in the league. Porzingis, look, 18 and 8, it'll be solid, but he doesn't really get a lot of offensive rebounds. He floats on the perimeter a lot, so his defense, he'll get you 8 points out of rebounds, but again, he's just going to be mostly a catch and shoot guy. He'll get his looks. 18 points a game is solid, but I mean, you're probably going to get around, maybe 32, 35 points a game from Porzingis in fantasy basketball points, which is a little bit underwhelming considering the profile he is as a player. I'm not in love with Porzingis. I've had him in fantasy before. I feel like his game doesn't really translate to him putting up monster numbers in fantasy. I think he can help you win on a basketball court, but I guess that's not really what we're talking about here. So yeah, Porzingis is a little bit underwhelming for me, but I do want to see how he is in that Dallas Mavericks offense when he's fully healthy.
Yeah, good point there. Interesting to point out, I think John Wall at the top of this list, averaging 19 and 5 coming in, has dealing with an injury right now, so we'll wait to see when he gets back. But if he's able to get back and lead that Rockets team, dominating the ball, dribbling it all the way through the court with a Christian Wood, is he able to jump up in the rankings? That's going to be something to watch. I think he might be able to definitely improve these numbers just a slight bit going forward. John Wall, definitely somebody I'm interested in on this list. Another guy is playoff P, pandemic P, whatever you want to call him. We didn't expect these high numbers from him, 25, 5, and 6. Very solid numbers for Paul George. If he can keep that going, he's definitely going to prove me wrong coming into the year. Didn't think he'd have this solid of a year, but definitely proving some people wrong with Paul George. Got to like that pick right there. And Devin Booker and De'Aaron Fox at the bottom of this list. Devin Booker, I mean, right there with AD is probably one of the bigger busts of the draft. Probably a top 12, 15 kind of pick for Devin Booker and just not getting the ball really enough. Chris Paul kind of leading that offense, setting it up for his entire team. Devin Booker still putting up some decent points, 22 a game, but not really any assists or rebounds to go along with it. So you kind of need some more points out of Devin Booker if he's going to be able to hit that ADP where he was drafted and make it worth it. But De'Aaron Fox, I think we were high on him coming into the year. Like you said, very inconsistent. His best game driving up his numbers a couple nights ago against the Pelicans, but unfortunately for De'Aaron Fox, you don't get to play the Pelicans every single night. So De'Aaron Fox, not really the top 30 guy that we thought he was, but let's see if he can get him moving in the right direction. Let's close out our top 50 with a couple names here. We got Clint Capella, Donovan Mitchell, Drew Holiday, Chris Paul, who we just talked about, and his teammate DeAndre Ayton for the Phoenix Suns. Give me some thoughts on these guys.
Whew. Drew Holiday is probably my favorite player in the NBA. And he's a solid fantasy player, definite starter. This isn't a second round player. This is probably the player that you can argue has had the biggest decline in terms of the round he was drafted. Obviously, he wasn't drafted in the top of the second round like a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was also more productive than Holiday. Holiday's had his nights. 16, 5, and 4 is nothing to sneeze at. But I mean, second round, man, it's too high, and I don't want to criticize. I don't want to criticize the Smooches because they've obviously put together a really good team. They made a really good trade for them, and they vaulted themselves into one of the top teams in this league. Something that I've been, even despite this Drew Holiday pick, I think their team has been really good. But man, this is really the only blemish that I'd say was on their record of picking him in the second round, because I feel like you could have gotten a lot more value there. So yeah, in terms of guys that have underperformed the most in terms of where they were drafted and how they're actually performing, I think Drew Holiday's got to be one of the first names mentioned. And it hurts to say because I love the guy, but I'll also say that Donovan Mitchell's a solid player, but there are some nights where he doesn't really give you much beyond scoring. So we'll see. I mean, we're kind of at the point. We're kind of at the point now where, like I said, we're very comfortable starting all of these guys. I'm comfortable starting Clint Capella, but I'm not in love with Clint Capella. I don't think he's got a similar type of game that other people have, like Andre Drummond, for example, but he doesn't dominate rebounds the way that a guy like Drummond does, and that's why you see him farther down on this list. But I still think Capella's a good option. Chris Paul, rock solid. He's steady. He'll get you starting caliber numbers, but I don't think there's much upside here. I think the guy in here with the most upside is potentially DeAndre Ayton. 13 and 12, it's solid, but I'm really going to monitor to see if DeAndre Ayton can become more of a part of this offense as the season goes along for the Phoenix Suns, because I think he's really talented, and I think this is a little bit low, not in terms of what his production has been so far, but I think there's real growth potential here. And I know we're talking about fantasy and not basketball, and not like real X's and O's basketball here. It's a different conversation, but I feel like it kind of intertwines a little bit. I think Ayton can improve as a player going throughout this season, and especially the second half as the season winds down. And I think that's going to be big. I think that's going to be big for DeAndre Ayton. So I think out of these last five guys, I think DeAndre Ayton is the guy that I would say would most likely to improve his stock from this point.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things you mentioned on most of these players. One thing I'll say, Donovan Mitchell, very interesting guy in this draft for me. Went around pick 30 to 35, somewhere in that range, dropping a little bit in these rankings here. And I think that has to do with Mike Conley coming back, stepping into a much larger role than he did previously, kind of back to that bubble Conley where he was putting up some good scoring and assist numbers. So Donovan Mitchell looks like hasn't really improved his numbers from last year where he was putting up about the same. So Donovan Mitchell looks like he's stepping into, he's hit the prime of his career and he's just going to ride it out. It doesn't look like there's much more improvement coming for Spider Mitchell. But that's going to wrap up our top 50 player rankings in the points league. Thank you for coming out, and we'll see you guys next time with the Fantasy Birds.